Hello, today is the 31st of May, so we are having a MicroProfile live hangout. So if you haven't put your name on the minutes, please add your name there. It's a joint responsibility to take notes. Please, please take notes as well. Okay, I think it's for this agenda, we can discuss the execution plan for the 2022 releases. So it's for the release document. So basically last week, we finalized this 2 weeks ago, finalized this document, and with the voting option 1 and then option 2 in the meeting in the voting thread, and then option 2 was the most favorable vote. So basically, is we want to do the GCATA-E10 core profile alignment in October, November, with the option whether to do the MicroProfile 5.1 with the manner changes and etc. So it's now we know at least October, November we are going to align with the GCATA-E10 core profile. So it's in the past like a MicroProfile 4.1 and 5 release until now. In our TCK, we didn't require any GCATA-E like a TCK the compliance and etc. However, with the GCATA-E10 core profile, which means we can add the requirement. So basically, it's ask the compatible implementation parsing all the MicroProfile component TCKs plus GCATA-E10 core profile TCKs. So are there any comments or any thought on this for the TCK requirement? So if not, so that means in the MicroProfile 6, so basically it's in the October, November time, we are going to release MicroProfile 6. So it's that's finalized. Release MicroProfile 6.0. So it's so basically, all of the specs align with GCATA-E10 core profile. So, and also that we are going to remove MicroProfile open tracing from the platform, from MicroProfile 6. Basically, which means it becomes standalone. And also will be add a MicroProfile telemetry. New spec. So the other content is MicroProfile metrics 5.0. And also there's manner change. We know there will be a JWT 2.1 and open API 3.1. So it's this is the option 2 at least for the October, November release. So for the open API 3.1, it has the integration with a beam validation. So now the question is we align with the core profile. Now the question is, do we also ask the compatible implementation to pass the bin validation TCK or not? Because I have not seen, I have not looked at the bin validation TCK as yet. So I don't know what kind of integration, etc. it has. So there was two options. One option is that we just make that kind of a no requirement. And then in the next version, Jakarta EE 11, for example, so we can add the bin validation in the Jakarta EE 11 core profile. And then we, in this case, we directly just ask the compatible implementation to certify against core profile TCKs. Are there any comments and etc.?
Well, I think you have to be more specific in the notes on the TCK requirement.
Okay, yeah. TCK requirement require parsing Jakarta EE 10 core profile TCKs. So I think it's kind of the bin validation TCK. I think it's maybe it's the kind of, we could make it optional. Basically, what we do not require, because the thing is, this is the first release of Open API 3.1. We're not sure whether it can work like really nicely with bin validation or not. So it's kind of the, we just, I will just say optional. Are there any objections?
Oh, I don't think we need to, in this case, specify it as being optional. I mean, technically, if it's not required, any Jakarta spec is optional.
Yeah. So in this case, we just not required, just say not required. Okay. Yeah, okay, thanks. That makes sense. So I think that's kind of the content. The other thing that I think is in the past was MicroProfile. We didn't do follow the kind of the formal process. Basically, the formal process is basically we need to do a plan review and then release review. However, we like in the 5 and also 4.1, we directly jump into the release review. So I think it's I think it's Ed brought up. Probably in the MicroProfile 6.0, we should follow the kind of the specification process. I mean, we should create a plan review to start with, because that need to go through the ballot and etc. But at least I think is for the Jakarta EE 10 core profile alignment, I think some spec maybe just need to do a micro release, like a service release per se. And for if they do service release, they don't need to go through the release process. But at least I think we have identified at least like a GWT, Open API, and also the telemetry and the whole umbrella one. We will need to go through the plan review. So are there any comments and etc.? And also we said we targeted for October and November. I think maybe we should target it for October. If we couldn't achieve that, and then we cannot basically directly fall back to November. So what people think?
If we have an implementation that can deliver.
Yeah, so hopefully.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So it is, yeah.
If you get it done by October, you also can, it's going to be ready for EclipseCon.
Yeah, absolutely. EclipseCon. And also, I don't know when the Java, is the Java 1 still going ahead? Ed, do you know?
Yeah, definitely Java 1 will go ahead.
All right, with the,
I mean, the dates are announced, so
okay, with
that's
that
going to
date.
happen.
Is that a part of the Oracle Code 1? Open world.
It's a combined event. There's open or cloud world or open world. I don't know. Sorry.
Do you know when the call for papers is going to go out on that?
I subscribe to the same list you guys do.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there going, yeah, I told all my guys to get proposals ready, and they're just sitting there waiting. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully, like if we do October release, kind of, yeah, as BGs at least for the EclipseCon, and hopefully, yeah, sounds like from what Ed said, probably the Java 1 is also a good target. So that would be nice. But this need to be yeah. So need to I will just contact us to the various notify the various teams, ask them to create a plan review. Yeah, to get started. At least they know what will be in their release and etc. And then the release review is with the kind of we create a release. So in this case, also we release target for October. And talk about Java 1. So there's a lot conferences in October. EclipseCon. Yeah, and others. So are there any other things about the MicroProfile 6.0? Okay.
Is it just me, or is Emily breaking?
Oh, am I broken?
And I can hear her fine. I don't hear her broken at all.
It worked okay for me.
Okay. So it sounds like John, you are having issues at your end. So
one point regarding Jakarta EE10.
Yeah.
The 10 release also want to support JPMS, the module system of Java SE.
Oh yeah, good point. Yes.
Do we plan to add that too as a requirement? Maybe that creates another work, maybe for other specs too.
So is is this idea that we would have module info Java files for each of the API projects, or is it just merely that we would define module names?
What is defined in Jakarta EE? I think, yeah, add that module info file and yeah, make it happen to be able to support that technology. I think one interesting aspect in supporting that, even if the main module system is not intended to be a JPMS, that could add additional security security to components because of the potential protection of modules and the access of APIs. That might be interesting in conjunction with the upcoming Java SE 18+ versions where the security manager is removed.
I think those are somewhat orthogonal. One is access protection, which is independent of security managers, just a fundamental part of the virtual machine.
Shouldn't we get like a POC demoing these on some spec before we committing with it?
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a pretty good idea. I mean, at the most basic level, right? If we use Service Loader to connect an API to its implementation, then that is pretty straightforward to do with JPMS. But if we have more complex mechanisms for how implementations connect to APIs, then yes, more significant proofs of concept will be needed, right? And then there's also, perhaps, I think one of the things that Jakarta really hasn't said much on is how, is there a JPMS story for how one builds MicroProfile implementations and programs MicroProfile applications?
Yeah, for Jakarta land is kind of, they just add a module infra, but didn't explore any JPMS, didn't enable anything. I mean,
Right, so they basically enable their APIs to be
yeah,
used in JPMS applications, but at the actual application server level, the class loading regime is basically the same, right? It's wars and ears and
yeah,
things, which have a very defined class loading semantics. I think MicroProfile, for the most part, probably doesn't even speak much about this.
yeah, that's fair. So now the question is like, kind of the, do we want to do the minimal minima? Like basically is just add module infra and then straight over the fence. So for the implementation to figure it out, if they want to support JPMS, yeah, they'll go ahead.
Right.
So
I think probably the big use case to look at here is, you know, people who want to write a microservice, right? They want to write their application, they want to J-link it down to a minimal image and deploy it in a container. So what should we do with JPMS to make that good, better?
I will chime in that if compiling it down with J-link to a minimal distribution is something we want people to do, you do actually have to implement the module info.java file and not just the automatic the automatic module name in the Maven build. I just wanted to go ahead and ping that.
No, that's good info, because I think basically maybe one of the goals should be that we figure out how to make it a bit easier, better for people to J-link a microservice implementation based on MicroProfile down to a nice compact container.
So I think a POC is a really good idea.
yeah. Who want to do that? Any volunteers? So if it's no volunteers, so it's we have two options. One is we just be quiet with the JPMS support, business as usual. Two is we merely add a module infra as what Jakarta has done. So basically, it's we add a module infra. That's all we do, and that is for at least the some implementations can make use of it, and then it's kind of they could get some feedback and etc. from their end user.
Emily, what about trying to add that module info to the telemetry spec and start with a simple solution and then explore what else needs to be done?
Yeah,
because that's a currently on the development specification, so we can edit there.
I think that's a good idea. It may be challenging in the sense that if you really wanted to demonstrate using that under a JPMS runtime, an implementation of it might need other parts of MicroProfile like config that also would need to be usable in that situation. So at some level, you may have to go back to the root and make sure it works well before you can go out to a leaf. But I do agree that a new thing is a good place to experiment.
Yeah. So we can try it out. We can try it out.
Hey, Emily, just sorry, before we move on, I was wondering what, in your knowledge, is the MicroProfile project with the fewest number of dependencies? If someone were going to make a proof of concept implementation, that might be a good project to start with, so we don't have as many like requires transitive and are less likely to run into a situation where we depend on something that hasn't modularized yet.
Right, I see. Config is the one.
Yeah, so I was going to say, it's probably the one that everyone else will use, at least.
Yeah. So telemetry will also depend on config. Maybe it's use config as an example then, as a guinea pig.
Yeah, especially because telemetry, well, it's basically a wrapper to open telemetry. So there's not much that we can do there with modules.
Yeah,
and second, the important case here is that if we want to add modules to existing projects, telemetry is kind of useless because there's no implementations apart from the small right one. So it doesn't give us much information on the difficulties of adding modules and so on. So yeah, but in the other side, config will have wide impact. So I don't know how good that will be as well.
Yeah, but adding the module info on the config will not impact others though. So if others want to also support GPMS, they have to also add the module info.
Okay.
So that sounds good. Now I volunteer Summers now. Sounds like you have some use case, Summers. Would you like to take a MicroProfile config to give it a go and to see the whether you can? Yeah.
So I'm not going to commit to anything, but if inspiration strikes, I would be willing to say I would be looking at MicroProfile config and this proof of concept. Right now, I'm kind of busy with a bunch of DevNexus 2023 coding.
Wow, already? I see.
Yeah, we're replacing a bunch of our backends, so work never stops.
Never knows. Maybe you want to use the MicroProfile config with the module GPMS functionality for your DevNexus backend.
Ooh. Oh, there's a whole long story I can't get into about that, but Vincent would be disappointed if it got any more complicated than him editing files in Cloud Cannon.
Okay.
So Emily,
Yeah.
I can try and take a look at that. It might be a couple weeks till I can get some free time, but I'm interested in it.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, BJ. Okay, BJ.
I have a graph about the dependencies of MicroProfile 5.0. I have to find the link to the ticket where I uploaded that graph, but I did a JQA dependency analysis, and I did it test-wise for MicroProfile 2 to see which spec is referencing with which Jakarta EE specification. And there are other options too that could be chosen. Because the config is referencing as dependency CDI, for example.
Yeah.
So the module need to be working there too. But Open API, for example, does not have any additional references. And JSON, for example, does not have references too. And that could be used in a Java SE environment too, right?
Yeah, but we want to explore the MicroProfile specs. So the other things for Open API, I think Open API depend on config, depend on MicroProfile config. It has a lot of configurations.
Then there is no reference.
It may not be visible at the API level.
Yeah,
Right.
maybe
If
it's
you're doing
Yeah.
a static analysis of the runtime classes. You may not see it until you go look at an implementation of config or of Open API, and then you see in that implementation it reaches back into config.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
that might be true.
that's true. Also, TCK has a dependency on the config. So, which means, yeah, the implementation has a dependency. So it's yeah, you can share that link.
Yeah, try to share that soon. Send it on the mailing list recently, so.
Yes, and this to BJ. Okay, so we will wait to see what BJ come up with. So for now we can hold it off for now before we jump into this area. So yes, I'm going to paste the link here.
Yeah, in the minutes.
Okay.
Oops. Here you can find an artifact in the ticket in a zip file where the reports are stored.
Okay, you see.
There's a folder, and then down there's a report subfolder, and there's a CSV file with a table of the use, and there's a plant UML section where SVG files with the graphs, the rendered graphs available.
Okay, so I have to unzip this zip and to see the graph, right?
Yeah.
So do you have the graph, or do you?
Yeah.
Let me stop share. You can share.
Just a second. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Here it is. You see here's the path where I stored that. I shortened that a little bit, but in the plant.uml subfolder, you find this graph. And here's the POM file on the top level, and yeah, the dependencies.
So this is the API dependency, isn't it?
Yes,
Okay.
these are API dependencies. From MicroProfile specs to Jakarta EE specs and others. Like, for example, here we have the OSGI references. Yeah, that's Open API. Health config. Here down we have CDI, fault tolerance, the JSON. JOT, open tracing, OSGI reference. Sorry, my browser takes a while for rendering that correctly. Yeah, here we have REST. But that's a test dependency only. The REST client and the REST backend side, metrics, annotations. Here we have another version of the JSON API. So there are two versions referenced. To examine that, that's possible to see that for future releases. You can see if there are is use of the same specification artifact in more than one version. It's a CSV table.
Right. So the Jakarta JSON, which spec pull in the like 200? So I think in the MicroProfile 6, we should fix that. So it's the must be
in the POM, the new version is referenced, and where was it? Looks like JOT is one of them. Cannot see it really clear. You can see that exactly in the plant.uml version.
Yeah, it must be JOT did not use a specific version in the POM in the POM instead of directly inherited from the parent. I think we will just like in the MicroProfile 6, we also need to go through the POMs and remove all the versions, basically, or delegate back to the parent. So in this case, you won't pull in multiple versions with the same.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I saw that on a few places, I think, when I looked into details. Yeah, that would help.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So I'm wondering, this is quite useful. I'm wondering whether you can make this kind of up-to-date, basically refresh itself and then available to MicroProfile project.
Yeah, currently we use that for the dependency analysis of Jakarta EE itself, where it really helped already defining the core profile. and I'm currently updating that for all the profiles. But I did it manually. At the moment, there's an issue with Sonatype. Sometimes does not update the search index of the Nexus instance from the staging repo and also from the Maven Central repo. And sometimes through caching issues, the tool does not fetch the latest changes when the index is not updated correctly. So that tool could be used to automatically prevent that happen instead of doing a post-mortem analysis only. It can be included in the build as a test to verify that you can release that artifact. For example, a use case might be not having release candidate transitive dependencies in the specification, which happened a few times in Jakarta E. The plan would be to have a reference, at least for the idea today in the platform meeting of Jakarta E, to have that as a check for the release from the staging repo to the central repo, to have that automatically checked. A final version is only allowed to be released to Maven Central when all the dependencies are pointing to final versions of the component specs too. But of course, what we do in Jakarta E with that tool, we should do that in MicroProfile too.
Yeah. So that would be
I
good.
made that analysis explicitly to get the core profile issues fixed. You remember, Emily, we discussed the CDI problem with the cyclic dependency.
Yeah.
Maybe when we find a good way to add that to MicroProfile, then we should do that, and I'm happy to help that on that.
Yeah, that would be good. I think it's at least for MicroProfile 6, so we can just split up all the.
What I can do is I can open an issue, and there is a link to the sources of that project and the demo where the project is used in conjunction with the Jakarta EE dependency analysis. And everybody who would like to play around with it, have then the links available to the GitHub repos that are currently being used. And then, of course, we can add it to the CI/CD. So every change will reflect it automatically. And if we have a target place where we can push the results, the reports, then it could be available to everybody very easily. All these graphs could be included in an ASCII doc file that is generated, for example. That's not configured here in that repo at the moment, but that's one of the use cases.
Yeah, I think if this is information should be in the Eclipse / MicroProfile. So basically, the top top level project. So it's basically it's directly the root is the kind of the POM, and then it's kind of clean up all other component specs.
Yeah, then I will add an issue there and put some links and references there. Also, the already posted link where I uploaded that on the Jakarta EE site. And I can do manual updates on request if necessary. When we start with a 6.0 release, we can use that for quality assurance.
Yeah, this sounds good.
I think when I
Okay, let me. Okay, I added a comment there.
yeah.
So it's
So that's the repo with the tool configuration.
or the Jakarta E dependencies, but this Jakarta E dependencies also include MicroProfile.
At the moment, that change I made is not included here, but it's only a configuration. Actually, what you do to configure the tool is define a filter that is different in MicroProfile. You define the root artifact for the analysis that is in MicroProfile, the POM file. And here it's, for example, the Jakarta E API, the platform or full profile API artifact. Then the type and the version. And here you define the repo where you want to fetch the releases. This is Maven Central, and that's the staging repo of Jakarta E. And yeah, then you simply run it as with Maven. And then it does the queries, builds the database, queries the database, and generates the report.
Okay, so that's good. So
yeah, short description is here. You only have to run Maven verify. But I will add a demo configuration for MicroProfile too soon, hopefully.
Yeah, so that would be
Then
good.
it's much easier. You just have to uncomment the configuration for MicroProfile.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Ian. Okay, so let me share the comment. Okay, so basically it's yeah. So I put the repo the link again. So it's this is top level MicroProfile repo. Okay, for the whole MicroProfile 6.0, I think we discussed. I think there's to-dos, so we can create the plan reviews, and also the TCK requirement. So it's basically I will need to update the. Let me see. Assign to myself. Update the TCK process. So it's at the moment is I will see. I mean, ensure that TCK process is kind of at the moment is only required MicroProfile component specifications, but at least is in the MicroProfile 4.1 and 5.0. I think when we release the 6.0, we need to change in the spec. Also, I will go through the TCK requirement in the TCK process. Let me see. MicroProfile. Working group. In the TCK process. Okay, so looks like we don't need to change the TCK process. Basically, we only need to make, yeah, this is a kind of just the same, doesn't define the scope for the spec releases. So it's in this case. So basically, TCK process is up to date. So only need to make sure the MP 6.0 spec doc has this requirement. Okay. Okay, then, so I think that's all for the 6.0. And the next thing is next thing is about the to vote. So it's a BJ started. Thank you, BJ, for doing that.
Yep.
So for the like a Java language and target version changes. So I think both vote will expire tomorrow, right, BJ?
Yeah, end of day tomorrow, the vote concludes.
Yeah. So basically, can you quickly summarize this so that people who have not read this email can quickly vote?
The quick summary is vote +1. No, the so this first one here basically is saying that we want to be thoughtful about raising the target version of Java. Right, we should only do it when we need to do it to ensure that our users of our API, whether they be implementations of the API or customers using the API, have maximum ability to run it on the version of Java they want to run on, not the version of Java we limited them to by advancing the Java version faster than necessary. This, of course, leaves room for us to use new Java features if they make sense for us. If we want to innovate and use records in the API of a MicroProfile spec, and that makes sense, then we should certainly do it, and we'll raise the version of that MicroProfile spec to reflect the use of the Java language feature. But other parts of the MicroProfile specification family don't necessarily need to also increase their Java version just because some downstream did. So it's basically about, compile low, run high.
Yeah, thank you. So by the way, BJ, you started the conversation, the discussion thread, however, is on the same thread. So
I'm not sure how that works. As I composed two completely different emails in my browser and hit send on them independently. So I have no idea how Google Group jammed them together in the same thread. That's magical.
that's very strange. So normally it's like you do in the Google Group here, you do new conversation. So that will ensure it will create a new thread.
Okay, sorry. I composed them in my own browser using Outlook, so I didn't use the Google Groups interface.
Right. Okay, so it's one more day to go. Do you want to, create another like a discussion thread? It seems, yeah.
I don't know. There hasn't been any discussion, so maybe it's not important.
What people think? Is it all clear? Okay, so if it's nobody have any concerns and etc., maybe we leave it. However, I put a link on the minutes, so please go ahead to do the vote. So the other one. So the other one is the version change for the new Jakarta EE versions. So this is directly impact the MicroProfile 6.0. So BJ, again, can you quickly summarize this?
Sure. This is similar in vein to the previous one, right? About compiling low and running high. which basically says that if a microprofile specification depends upon a Jakarta EE specification, then we want to use the oldest Jakarta EE specification version that makes sense for that version, that microprofile specification. And that gives, again, maximum freedom to implementers implementing the microprofile specification and users using the microprofile specification as they have more options. Right, but clearly, if a microprofile specification is going to take advantage of some new feature in a upstream Jakarta EE specification, then of course it should increase its requirements on that Jakarta EE specification. But that should be when it's done, not just because it can be done.
Right. So which means for example, pick one microprofile stack, for example, for tolerance. At the moment, the latest release work with Jakarta EE 9.1, and in the MET work with both Jakarta EE 9.1 and Jakarta EE 10. Maybe it's for the align with Jakarta EE 10. It doesn't, the API and etc. doesn't need to change.
Right.
So
well, I think
service release.
Well, I think in a more specific example, if we pick on microprofile config, right, it's based upon the CDI specification.
Yeah.
Right? And there's certain features that use the CDI extensions to offer. Now, of course, if the CDI specification is enhanced to add a new feature and thus has a new version, but that new feature is not used by microprofile config, then there's no reason that the microprofile config API should update its dependency on CDI to the newer version, because it's not important, it's not necessary.
That causes a lot of trouble in Jakarta EE at the moment because there is transactions or transaction, the Maven artifact that is based on an old version of CDI and has a lot of transitive dependencies also of old versions. And that generates a dependency graph that is really awful for the web and the full profile.
But doesn't the Maven resolution process collapse the two dependencies on CDI to a single version?
When you configure the profile artifact correct, then you can circumvent the issues. But for the users who want to build their own platform and not rely on the profile packages where that might be solved, then it's really hard to know that, you can use CDI 3 and CDI 4 with that version of transactions, because it only uses a part that has not changed. But you need a lot of special knowledge to do that, and that's really hard for users who are not part of these meetings to know that.
Right. I mean, I guess I would have thought that Maven would have figured that out, right? If he's building the dependency chain and he sees two versions of an artifact, he's going to have to pick one of them.
Yeah, it picks one of them. Only one of them is allowed, but there are strong rules when that is used. Transitiveness levels take into account and where to place it in the POM file. The first definition beats the second, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And if you change something and then something unexpected happens, that could be a long journey to find that error in a user application.
Yeah, so I think it's when we do the alignment and for the all microprofile stacks, normally we just change all the dependencies. So basically, it's in the microprofile parent, we directly consume the core profile and directly pull them in.
Right. So, but that basically sounds completely in contraposition to this item.
Yeah, that's the, and
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. So, but you've already voted +1, Emily, so it's too late.
So it's a kind of the, is okay to do that. Is okay to do this. However, we have been doing the umbrella kind of the pull in thing.
Right. So, I mean, this is we should, I guess Dave Blevins had some thoughts on this too. So, and I don't think he's on our call today. So he should weigh in here as well, I guess.
I will ping him for sure. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
no worries.
Thank you, Cesar. Didn't I only when I only read it shouldn't change versions. I mean, for the new Jakarta E versions, kind of the yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah. Normally, my experience has always been that talking about the individual parts, right? Because MicroProfile is a family of specifications. Jakarta EE is a family of specifications, and they're all individually evolving at different rates and paces. And of course, MicroProfile config as an individual specification doesn't depend on all of Jakarta EE, just some parts. Right. And so this was really about a part-to-part relationship, but it seems that your current practice really is a part to many, right?
Yeah. So current practice and the current like our infrastructure is pull the whole kind of the Jakarta E versions in the parent, and then all the spec directly inherit from there. So it's yeah, that's kind of what is currently in practice. So
Yeah, and they match the profile versions exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So now I guess that so so let's say MicroProfile 6 ships, and of course there are some specifications within it that don't change for MicroProfile 6, right? They're the same as they were before. Do they get updated to depend upon whatever Jakarta EE10 dependency exists at the time, or do you re-release their API artifacts to get the updated Maven dependencies with a service release or something? How do you plan to cover that?
We do a kind of change the dependency. If there's no other change, we just do a service release.
Right. So basically everything changes in MicroProfile 6. Just some of the changes are dependency.
Yeah. Yes. Some of them manner change, some of them just a service change, service release.
And I suppose that then also implicates the TCK, because the TCK has to be updated to run with compatible implementations that run on Jakarta EE10.
Some TCK is kind of some TCK change. So basically is we have to, some TCK change is merely about dependency change. So however, that would be also need to update just in the kind of the compliance and etc. is required, use the latest the service release TCK. I think for this,
there's a difference to Jakarta E in MicroProfile. The TCK is a part of that component specification. So they're combined together and have the same version number. The spec document, the API, and the TCK. That's different in Jakarta E, and what not does affect that too much in the past was the part that the implementation has to check MicroProfile TCK parts only, and they only check the MicroProfile part, and the combined usage of subsequent transitive used Jakarta EE specifications, component specifications. the Jakarta EE component specifications were not tested by a MicroProfile platform automatically. So you can do that separately. It might be interesting for the vendors that they now can use the TCK of Jakarta EE core profile to verify that they are compliant to the core profile of Jakarta EE, and then on top test for the compliance to MicroProfile.
Yeah, so I mean, I get that the MicroProfile TCKs don't need to test Jakarta specifications, but if the API artifact depends upon Jakarta EE10 APIs, then that implicitly means that the compatible implementation depends upon Jakarta EE10 and the TCK depends upon Jakarta EE10, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
they both. By the way, it's 6 minutes past the hour.
Oh.
Sorry, I answered. So it's I think we need to talk more on this one maybe next time.
So should we suspend the vote on the second one?
Yeah, let's suspend the vote and then discuss again. And then because I didn't sorry, my fault. I didn't read that part.
Okay.
We discussed. So, but this one will expire tomorrow. I think this one seems quite straightforward. Okay, with that, thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.